Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something that might just change your life. Are you spending your energy wishing the world was easier, or are you using that same energy becoming stronger? We live in a world that constantly throws challenges our way, deadlines, bills, responsibilities, setbacks. And when life gets tough, most people say, "I wish things were easier." But here's what I learned from my mentor. That wish is a waste of your power. One of the most common psychological traps that patients and individuals alike fall into is the quiet wish that life would simply become easier. It's a subtle desire, often unspoken, rooted in a natural human aversion to discomfort. We are neurologically conditioned to seek safety, predictability, and ease. However, from a clinical and behavioral standpoint, this craving for ease can become a significant barrier to growth and well-being. The truth is, life is inherently complex. It is filled with stressors, biological, emotional, financial, interpersonal. These stressors are not going to vanish with time or wishful thinking. What we must do, instead of hoping the external stimuli lessen, is reorient ourselves to increase internal resilience. The first step in shifting this orientation is cognitive reframing, an evidence-based psychological technique used in therapy. Instead of perceiving challenges as unjust burdens, one must begin to interpret them as invitations to evolve. For instance, when someone says, "I wish my job was less stressful," it's important to investigate why that stress exists. Is it due to a lack of organization, poor communication skills, inadequate boundaries? These are not external problems. They are internal opportunities. The more you grow in your competence and emotional intelligence, the less those same stressors will affect you. This is not a theory of avoidance or denial. It is a theory of transformation. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain is malleable. With deliberate effort, one can adapt, rewire, and strengthen cognitive processes. The implication is profound. You can train your brain to become better at handling adversity. You can increase your emotional bandwidth, your tolerance for complexity, and your ability to make decisions under pressure. In medicine, we see this constantly. A first-year medical student is overwhelmed by anatomy. By the third year, they are calmly handling surgical rotations. The content hasn't changed. The individual has. Resilience, therefore, becomes the more beneficial pursuit. From a physiological perspective, resilience doesn't mean the absence of stress. It means quicker recovery from stress, better management of cortisol levels, a stronger autonomic nervous system response. Patients who learn resilience techniques, breath work, mindfulness, cognitive reappraisal report lower anxiety and higher life satisfaction. In essence, their lives didn't become easier, they became better equipped. Moreover, wishing for ease implies a static worldview, that if only the world would soften, we could finally be at peace. But the world is dynamic. It will continue to present unexpected disruptions. The true predictor of success, whether psychological, financial, or physical, is adaptability. And adaptability is only possible through intentional self-betterment. You must become the kind of person who does not fear hard times, but rather faces them with practiced poise. It is also worth considering the moral weight of such transformation. When individuals choose growth over ease, they set an example. Children, peers, and communities benefit from that courage. In healthcare, we often say that healing is not just individual, it's systemic. When one person becomes more capable, their ripple effect can influence many. So by choosing to become better, rather than hoping life simplifies, you are not just improving your own outcome, you are influencing the system around you. In summary, the quest for an easier life is a fantasy that keeps individuals dependent, anxious, and reactive. The pursuit of becoming better, however, is grounded in evidence, empowered by practice, and produces durable change. In your moments of discomfort, don't ask, "Why is this so hard?" Ask instead, "How can I rise to meet this?" The answer to that question is the path to your transformation. In clinical practice, one of the most revealing therapeutic moments occurs when a patient transitions from externalizing their problems, blaming circumstances, people, or events, to recognizing that their own internal framework plays a central role in how they experience those challenges. This shift is not merely philosophical, it is foundational to lasting change. The second key insight, "You are the solution," is not a motivational slogan. It is a psychologically, neurologically, and behaviorally sound principle that empowers the individual to interrupt cycles of helplessness and regain agency. When a patient presents with repeated stress, failure, or relational dysfunction, the first instinct is often to search for external culprits. My boss is too demanding, my partner never listens, or the economy is against me. While these stressors may indeed be real and impactful, they are not the entirety of the story. The human nervous system does not simply react to objective reality, it interprets it. The interpretation is shaped by one's beliefs, coping mechanisms, emotional regulation skills, and personal history. Two individuals can encounter the same challenge and have entirely different outcomes based on how they perceive and respond to it. From a neurological standpoint, the brain is predictive. It constructs meaning based on prior experiences and internal schemas. If a person sees themselves as powerless, the brain filters the environment to reinforce that perception, often missing cues that might indicate agency or opportunity. However, when a person begins to understand that their thoughts, habits, and choices are influencing their outcomes more than they realize, a transformation occurs. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, begins to take more control, allowing for better decision-making and long-term planning. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, one of the most empirically validated psychological approaches, operates on this exact premise. The core belief is that while we cannot control everything that happens to us, we can control how we think about and respond to those events. The therapeutic goal becomes shifting maladaptive thoughts, like "I'm stuck" or "there's nothing I can do," into constructive beliefs, such as "I have tools to manage this," or "I can learn a better way." When the patient begins to see themselves not as a passive recipient of difficulty, but as an active participant in their own recovery and advancement, we witness genuine empowerment. This internal locus of control, knowing that you are not a bystander in your own life, is correlated with higher resilience, better health outcomes, and greater emotional well-being. It's not that external challenges cease to exist. Rather, the individual becomes more equipped to navigate them. This sense of capability has a protective effect against depression, anxiety, and burnout. Even in chronic illness populations, those with a strong belief in their personal efficacy report better quality of life and adherence to treatment. Moreover, the idea that you are the solution fosters a mindset of proactive learning. Instead of waiting for circumstances to improve, individuals begin seeking knowledge, acquiring skills, and developing habits that make them more adaptive. They read, train, ask questions, and surround themselves with growth-oriented environments. This commitment to personal development transforms not only their capacity to solve problems, but also their identity. They no longer see themselves as victims of life. They become students and eventually masters of it. Finally, the psychological clarity that comes from accepting responsibility without self-blame can be deeply healing. It strips away the illusion that salvation lies in external change and places the power exactly where it belongs, within the individual. By acknowledging that they can become the solution to their own difficulties, people often discover a level of strength and competence they never knew they possessed. This is not denial of hardship. It is the realization that while you may not have created every challenge in your life, you are always part of the equation that can change the outcome. You are not just affected by life, you affect it. That knowledge, when internalized, is both the beginning of healing and the path to excellence. Within the domain of behavioral science and clinical psychology, the notion that skills are optional or secondary is deeply flawed. In fact, the development and refinement of core life skills, whether cognitive, emotional, interpersonal, or technical, are among the most predictive factors of personal and professional success. The third key point, that skills are the ultimate tools, is not merely practical advice. It is a principle grounded in neurobiology, psychotherapeutic evidence, and real-world observations. A lack of skill often masquerades as external adversity. In reality, many perceived problems are solvable, not by changing the circumstances, but by enhancing the individual's ability to meet them with competence. From a developmental perspective, skill acquisition begins in early childhood and continues through life. However, adult learning, particularly in emotionally charged or complex environments, requires intention. Patients often report feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or powerless, but what we frequently discover during psychological assessment is that they are facing situations without the necessary tools. For example, someone struggling with chronic interpersonal conflict may not have poor intentions. They may simply lack conflict resolution skills or effective communication strategies. These deficits lead to repeated stress, further entrenching feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. It is important to recognize that skill development is neurologically supported. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, does not cease after adolescence. In fact, the adult brain remains highly adaptable when exposed to repeated practice and new challenges. This means that individuals who commit to skill building, whether in public speaking, time management, emotional regulation, or leadership, are literally reshaping their neural architecture. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes automatic and effortless. In other words, problems that seemed insurmountable are diminished not because the world changed, but because the person became more skilled. In therapeutic practice, one of the most transformative interventions is skills training. Dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, for instance, incorporates modules focused on distress tolerance, emotional regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness. These aren't abstract concepts. They're practical, teachable, and applicable skills that help patients navigate life with greater ease. When a patient learns how to pause before reacting, how to ask for what they need, how to manage their schedule, or how to plan long-term, their subjective sense of control increases. They no longer experience life as a series of unpredictable crises, but as a sequence of challenges they are prepared to meet. Skills also bridge the gap between intention and action. A person may want to succeed, to contribute, to be healthy or happy, but without the skill set to translate those desires into behavior, they remain stuck in aspiration. This is where frustration often sets in, and with it, emotional distress. The remedy is not in motivation alone. Motivation fluctuates. Skill, on the other hand, provides a reliable structure for action. If you learn how to structure your day, how to make decisions under pressure, how to de-escalate conflict, or how to articulate your boundaries, life becomes more navigable. Furthermore, the process of developing skills fosters self-efficacy, a psychological belief in one's capacity to effect change. The more someone practices and sees tangible results, the more they begin to trust themselves. This sense of capability has cascading benefits, improving confidence, resilience, and even physical health outcomes. In a healthcare setting, for example, patients who are trained in self-monitoring, goal-setting, and communication with providers manage chronic conditions significantly better than those without such training. Ultimately, life is not about eliminating challenges. It is about acquiring the tools necessary to address them. Skills are those tools. They are the levers that allow you to lift burdens that once felt immovable. They turn chaos into order, anxiety into confidence, and helplessness into mastery. If there is one prescription that applies universally across diagnoses, demographics, and domains, it is this: build your skill set. Because in a world that will never stop changing, your greatest protection is your ability to adapt, and your greatest asset is what you've trained yourself to do well. Among the many misunderstandings surrounding personal success and life satisfaction, one of the most persistent is the belief that the key to advancement lies solely in external productivity, measurable outputs, financial gain, or accolades. However, as a clinician observing patterns across various populations, it becomes increasingly clear that the most sustainable and meaningful progress occurs when individuals prioritize internal development. The fourth key insight, work harder on yourself than you do on your job, reflects a vital truth confirmed in both psychological theory and clinical outcomes. Inner growth catalyzes outer achievement. When a patient presents with burnout, chronic stress, or feelings of underachievement, the initial temptation may be to treat the symptoms, improve sleep, reduce workload, enhance time management. While these interventions are important, they often function as temporary relief unless the core issue is addressed: a neglected inner life. Most individuals have been trained, explicitly or implicitly, to direct their energy toward doing more hours, more tasks, more hustle, while investing little in developing the clarity, discipline, and emotional capacity required to manage those demands effectively. From a psychophysiological perspective, the individual's internal state, their mindset, emotional regulation, cognitive processing, and self-concept dictates how they perceive and respond to external demands. A person who lacks emotional resilience, for example, is more likely to experience overwhelm from moderate stress. Similarly, someone with poor self-esteem may interpret constructive feedback as personal rejection. These reactions aren't reflections of external reality, they're expressions of an underdeveloped inner framework. Working on oneself involves a broad but precise process of psychological refinement. It includes cultivating self-awareness, improving impulse control, building intrinsic motivation, and learning to evaluate one's thoughts and behaviors objectively. Cognitive behavioral strategies are effective tools here. By identifying and restructuring maladaptive thought patterns, such as catastrophizing or black and white thinking, patients learn to respond to stress with reason rather than reactivity. Emotional literacy, another critical component, allows individuals to understand what they're feeling and why, leading to better communication and decision-making. This internal labor, what we might clinically refer to as intrapersonal work, is difficult, often uncomfortable, and frequently delayed until crisis forces a confrontation. Yet it is the most valuable form of labor one can undertake. Jobs change, markets evolve, external conditions fluctuate, but the internal toolkit that a person develops through consistent self-work becomes a stable foundation. A professional who has honed self-discipline, reflective thinking, and healthy boundaries is far better positioned to thrive in demanding environments than one who has only mastered technical skill. Neuroscientific research reinforces this approach. The prefrontal cortex, associated with executive functions such as planning, focus, and self-regulation, strengthens through repeated use. Practicing mindfulness, journaling, engaging in therapy, or pursuing structured self-inquiry are not abstract or indulgent acts. They are neurologically enhancing behaviors. Over time, this kind of self-work builds mental resilience, enhances emotional regulation, and expands cognitive flexibility, qualities that directly translate into improved job performance, relationship satisfaction, and overall well-being. Furthermore, investing in oneself cultivates a sense of internal alignment. When individuals know who they are, what they value, and where they are headed, they experience less existential anxiety. They are not working just to survive or prove something to others. They are building a life congruent with their identity. This integrity of self reduces the cognitive dissonance that so often leads to mental distress and burnout. From a medical and psychological standpoint, the person you become is far more significant than the job you perform. Because even if your role or industry changes, even if circumstances shift dramatically, the foundation you've built inside yourself remains. It travels with you, it supports you, it sustains you. Therefore, the most strategic investment is not in outcomes or titles, but in becoming a person of clarity, resilience, and emotional depth. When that happens, the job may remain the same, but your ability to excel and to enjoy the journey transforms entirely. In clinical settings, one of the more subtle yet powerful themes that emerges in long-term behavioral change is the role of preparation in shaping outcomes. While patients often express a desire for better opportunities, be it in relationships, career, or health, they frequently overlook the degree to which opportunity favors the prepared. The sixth insight: preparation creates opportunity, is not merely aspirational. It is an evidence-based observation rooted in behavioral psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and performance science. People who consistently prepare are far more likely to recognize and capitalize on opportunities when they arise. Opportunities in life rarely come with warning. They often appear disguised as challenges or unexpected changes. From a psychological standpoint, whether someone sees an event as an opportunity or a threat depends heavily on their internal readiness. A patient who has invested time in building their communication skills for instance, may view a difficult conversation with a supervisor as a chance to grow or advocate for themselves. Another individual with the same opportunity but without the necessary preparation may avoid the conversation entirely out of fear or insecurity. The external condition is the same. The difference lies in the internal preparation. In neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, plays a central role in this concept. It allows individuals to simulate possible futures, strategize responses, and inhibit unproductive impulses. Preparation activates and strengthens this region through consistent practice, whether in rehearsal, reflection, journaling, or skill-building exercises. Patients effectively train the brain to respond with confidence rather than panic. It is this consistent mental rehearsal that enables them to act swiftly and competently when an opportunity arises. In essence, preparation is what allows the brain to respond with precision rather than reactivity. This principle is particularly important in high-stress environments. In emergency medicine, for example, professionals do not wait for a crisis to learn how to act. They run simulations. They rehearse responses. They anticipate variables. The same logic applies to daily life. Whether it's preparing for a difficult family discussion, a job interview, or managing chronic illness, those who plan, educate themselves, and mentally rehearse consistently outperform those who simply react. In therapeutic modalities such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, preparation is built into the structure. Patients are encouraged to anticipate challenges and construct coping strategies in advance. A person struggling with social anxiety, for instance, is not just exposed to social situations, they're taught how to plan for them, what to say, how to respond, how to manage physiological symptoms. This level of preparation reduces anticipatory anxiety and increases the likelihood of a successful outcome, reinforcing confidence and reducing avoidance behavior. Another overlooked benefit of preparation is its impact on self-concept. When individuals prepare regularly, they begin to see themselves as competent, reliable, and forward-thinking. This self-perception enhances self-esteem and motivation. Conversely, those who habitually wing it often internalize a sense of inadequacy or randomness, which leads to learned helplessness over time. Preparation fosters not only competence but identity, the belief that one is the kind of person who is ready when the moment arrives. Moreover, preparation builds momentum. Each act of preparation reinforces a cognitive and emotional framework of progress. This framework becomes self-sustaining, helping individuals manage setbacks more effectively and remain focused on long-term goals. It promotes patience, because when one is preparing diligently, there is less anxiety about timing. There is a deep trust that when the opportunity comes, and it will, the groundwork will already be in place. It is crucial to stress that preparation is not perfectionism. The goal is not to eliminate all risk or guarantee success, but to reduce avoidable error and increase adaptive response. Life will always contain variables beyond control. However, through preparation, individuals shift their role from passive observers to active participants in shaping their trajectory. In summary, preparation is not only a predictor of external success, but also a protective factor against internal distress. It turns the unpredictable into the manageable, the overwhelming into the structured, and potential into performance. When opportunity arrives, and it inevitably does, it is not the most gifted but the most prepared who are able to receive it fully. In clinical practice, one of the most overlooked yet critical elements in human development is the relationship between readiness and outcome. While people often focus on goals, ambitions, and the desire for life to get better, few fully appreciate the foundational role that preparation plays in determining whether those aspirations are ever realized. The concept that preparation creates opportunity is not merely a motivational ideal, it is a psychological and neurological truth, observable across therapeutic contexts, performance studies, and even medical recovery trajectories. Individuals who prepare mentally, emotionally, practically, consistently position themselves to benefit from the very circumstances others perceive as threatening, uncertain, or out of reach. Opportunities, contrary to popular belief, are rarely handed out at random. They are not simply accidents of luck or fortune. More often, they emerge within complex dynamic environments where timing, perception, and capacity must align. From a psychological perspective, this alignment is far more likely when an individual has been intentionally cultivating the internal structure necessary to recognize and respond effectively to the chance at hand. In simpler terms, people who are mentally and emotionally prepared are able to detect opportunity in what others may experience as mere noise or even chaos. Neuroscientifically, this principle is underpinned by the function of the brain's executive system, particularly the prefrontal cortex. This area governs forward planning, strategic thinking, working memory, and impulse control. When someone routinely engages in preparation, whether by organizing their thoughts, rehearsing responses, visualizing scenarios, or developing concrete skills, they activate and strengthen this system. The result is a brain better suited to make rapid, accurate decisions under pressure, to remain emotionally regulated, and to pursue long-term goals despite short-term setbacks. One of the more practical applications of this principle can be seen in exposure-based therapy, particularly in treating anxiety disorders. Take, for instance, a patient with panic disorder who is preparing to return to work after a long absence. Success is not achieved by simply showing up and hoping for the best. Instead, the process involves exposure hierarchies, relaxation training, cognitive restructuring, and contingency planning. These steps are all forms of psychological preparation. They allow the patient to build tolerance, anticipate challenges, and develop confidence. Without such preparation, even a minor setback could trigger avoidance or relapse. But with it, the same situation becomes a manageable, even empowering experience. Preparation also has a self-confirming quality. The more one prepares, the more one identifies as someone who is capable, resourceful, and intentional. This identity in turn fuels further effort and increases the likelihood of follow-through. In contrast, individuals who continually face life unprepared often develop a sense of helplessness or chronic insecurity. They become reactive rather than proactive, driven more by crisis management than by goal orientation. In therapy, shifting from a reactive to a proactive mindset is a major therapeutic goal, and preparation is a core component of that shift. Furthermore, preparation reduces fear. Much of human anxiety stems from the unknown, from the uncertainty of what might happen and whether one will be able to handle it. While no amount of preparation can eliminate uncertainty entirely, it does inoculate the individual against its most paralyzing effects. A prepared mind is less shocked by change, less derailed by failure, and less dependent on ideal conditions. It is trained to adapt, improvise, and persist. Clinically, we can say that preparation serves as both a preventative and a developmental tool. It prevents unnecessary suffering by increasing readiness for inevitable challenges, and it develops the capacities necessary to thrive in complexity. Life's pivotal moments often come without warning: a conversation, an interview, a crisis, or a connection, and they favor those who have been quietly, consistently preparing. What looks like luck from the outside is, more often than not, the byproduct of sustained effort behind the scenes. Ultimately, preparation is a form of self-respect. It is the act of honoring one's future by investing in the present. It transforms potential into capacity and capacity into performance. And in doing so, it ensures that when life opens a door, you are already standing there, ready to walk through it.